unless you guys have already had these types of conversations together, in which case kudos. The last thing in the last few minutes that I wanted to also talk about is the team involvement. So a couple ways to think about the team when you're working towards an exit. And I think Will or somebody brought this up, how do I thank them for the work that they did that allowed me to get it to this point? But then also, when do I start sharing with them that I'm thinking about an exit, whatever that is for you? Because it's not always so clear cut, like what the right time to do that is. And there are some potential repercussions if we don't plan it out that, could happen. So let's start with different ways that you could choose to thank your people. Has anybody ever looked at these things before? Have you thought about, if I decide to leave or transition out, how would I kind of reward my employees? How would I motivate them? How would I say thank you? As conversations start, go ahead.
I've thought about this a lot before. Like we have a couple people in the business that are key employees. Maybe giving them some equity before we exit a little bit, so that when we do exit, if it's for a certain amount of money, or if we're selling the business, they could get a portion of that, or giving them a big bonus, or just putting them in a position where they'll be indispensable when the business sells to somebody else or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's critical. In many respects, some of those key employees are what are the reasons why somebody is thinking about buying you. Right? If they don't come along for the ride, what happens? If they're not there to continue running the business in your absence, what happens? But I think you bring up some good ways of doing it. You can pay them bonuses. You can give the right people maybe access to some equity. Have you thought about a plan of how and when you might tell your employees that you're thinking about making a transition?
I've already engaged my key employees with the plan. It's been it's been part of the conversation for 2 years.
That helps, right? Because it's not like you're springing on them. I'm ready to do this next month.
Right.
You've got some time to socialize it, some time to get the foundation in place.
Yeah, and that's been, for me, it's been really critical to have it be something that's we're all aware of, because we've been just chipping away at the different structures that are needed for me to be able to, take my sabbatical.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's, it's good also for your people to, to feel like, hey, I'm part of the inner circle. He's willing to share this with me. And together we're going to build something that will be good for him, but it'll be good for us too.
Right.
I'm sure that there's a compensation element that, like, when you do exit operationally, that there's probably going to be some change in compensation for them to, continue running the ship without you there. So it's definitely a win-win. For those of you who are thinking about selling to outsiders, have you ever thought about what if the potential buyer is going to come in and their game plan is to just let my people go, or let a lot of them go?
So that's what I was thinking. Sharing this prematurely could nervous a lot of existing employees, because no one knows what's going to happen, right? And you might not want that uncertainty.
Yeah, I agree. And so there's not an exact science to this. Like, you definitely, if you don't have like a key team that you're like, Jay's got this unique scenario that he's got 1.5 years-ish, 2 years that he's working towards a 1-year sabbatical, and his leadership team is partnering with him on that. It's different to start telling your employees, too prematurely, that I'm thinking about not being here anymore. However you say that, because it could lead to people thinking, well, okay, well, Should I put my resume out on the street? How long is this going to be a viable option for me? And what if they start talking? What about if some of your key clients found out that you were thinking about leaving? What impact would that have on your business? What about key vendors? And so, yeah, you have to be careful about it. And then that leads to the fourth point, like when the time is right, and there's no perfect formula for this. Who do I involve in the conversation and when? So I had a friend who was the CFO of a small company that was going through a sale process. This is probably 15 plus years ago. He did not have equity, but they knew, the owners knew that there's no way they were going to make it through this transaction without heavy involvement from the CFO to really lead it from their side. You know, to really, there's a ton, due diligence is a total pain in the butt, and it's worse than you think it's going to be. And there's a lot of work to do to kind of get prepared, package things up, share information, be able to defend information, answer questions, all that kind of stuff. And so his owners didn't give him equity, but basically gave him a bonus, a big bonus akin to equity on if you get this through, you get us into the end zone. And so they didn't have to tell the whole team that they're going through this. They disclosed to him, he really ran it. And maybe there were one or two other key people who kind of got let in a little bit later, but most people did not know until it was right upon them. And that's the way that a lot of businesses do it. What are you guys kind of taking away from this?
I just think there's too many variables to an exit that things could fall through and problems could happen, or the way that the negotiations go aren't favorable to everybody, or you just don't know, you know, you're in it, you're trying to figure it out. And if you reveal that to your employees before you know anything, you're probably saying the wrong thing. You know, you're probably going to explain to them, oh, we're selling for this, but you know, all these people are going to stay, but then they don't stay, you know, or something else happens. You just don't know anything. And so that's probably a good reason to maybe just involve only people who need to know.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if there is one rule of thumb, it's just who needs to know. There's not an exact science to when that is.
Which is typically those touching like finance or biz
Yep.
operations, and keeping that in a bubble essentially until it.
Yeah,
It's more real.
and tying some incentive to them to not only get the deal done, but to keep their mouth shut. And kind of building that together. That's just the reality of it. It'll be very difficult, unless you have a really small business. It'd be very difficult to go through the transaction just 100% with you're the only person who's involved in getting the documentation together, dealing with, the potential buyers, et cetera. So there will be some people. Just know that you're going to have to use your own discretion about who you should tell and when. It's not a blanket announcement until it's a done deal, but there will be some key people on your team that you'll probably need some help with to pull it off. I always say exiting is a team sport. So what are the other